Welcome back to the Mailrite Show, ladies and gentlemen. Today is episode number 341. John and I are super stoked to talk about BoomTown today. So the background information for this particular show is that after many, many years of doing reviews in BoomTown, I finally got an end user license and created a huge review. Now, it is stuck in the approval process. I had to get permission because I cannot name them, but I got one of BoomTown's largest clients to provide me access. So I have to get to make sure that I properly edited out all the information, everything on the site, and so on and so forth. But anyway, the point of this is that I really got a great look from a great customer, and I'm super excited to talk about it. But before we get into that, my co-host, Jonathan Denwood, who needs no introduction, WordPress maestro. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience?
I wasn't sure about the maestro. I'm the founder of mail-right.com. We provide a really great looking website that really really presents you and your local brand, plus a series of marketing tools, digital marketing tools that will help you drive traffic to that website and convert them into good quality digital leads. Over to you, Rob.
Beautiful. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know who BoomTown is, they are arguably, they got to be number one, number two in the entire industry. By revenue, they are like somewhere between $20 and $50 million a year, which is almost unheard of inside the real estate space in terms of being a real estate marketing company. I'm going to guess that BoomTown is number two by revenue. If I had to guess, number one would be Real Estate Webmasters. And so they specialize in building a large platform website that has the similar design that it's had the entire time. All you have to do is look at a single example of theirs, and pretty much all the BoomTown sites work the same way. But they drive traffic using PPC, social media marketing, Instagram marketing, and they drive traffic into the site. They drive traffic into an agent, a user, like an agent's profile. So here's the bit that makes people tune into me in the first place. What a lot of people don't know is that BoomTown was originally kind of a hacky platform. They came up with this idea of posting ads automatically in Craigslist and creating these auto-generated ads that go into Craigslist advertising listings in the real estate section. Well, nobody had ever done that. Like, BoomTown was the first. And so 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, BoomTown had hundreds, thousands of people coming into the site that were all being generated as referral traffic off Craigslist. And they were the only people doing it. So for a while, they took the real estate marketing industry by storm. But Craigslist was already getting funky with people doing these auto-placed ads, and they were making it difficult. They were using their team, which is mostly volunteer crowdsourced teams. Craigslist was starting to say, no, we're not going to allow you to do that anymore. Okay. So they had a few tricks, and eventually they got blocked. They couldn't do it anymore, which meant that they were left with their websites and their CRMs. Now, fortunately, they'd made enough money and established themselves enough in the marketplace that they had built a decent website on WordPress multi-sites. And
it was multi-site, was it?
Huh?
It was multi-site.
Yeah, multi-site. Yeah. So WordPress multi-sites, and then they also started to build in a really good server-based CRM solution, which I had never had a chance to look at. But what they did when they built that server thing is they made it look as if you're still in the back end of WordPress, which of course you are not. It works way too fast and way too well to be a WordPress plugin, which is what they're called. So what they've done is they've created two systems that look similar to each other. A WordPress website, which they feed into a pretty sophisticated back-end CRM lead management system.
This is fascinating. I'm sorry to interrupt, because this is fascinating, because this is fundamentally what I've done in MailRite. It's a it's WordPress on SaaS using multi-site. It's they're doing exactly, but a lot earlier. I'm a slow learner, aren't I, Robert? A bloody slow. Hopefully there's some hope for me, but I'm a slow learner, aren't I?
Yeah. So I'm not gonna comment on that. I'm just gonna say it was done. It was done before. They've done it. They've done it very well this time. And what they've really done, so their call to action, John, has always been kind of a clever approach to the way that end users market themselves using digital tools. And I was starting to feel like they had gotten behind the eight ball because I had not looked at their platform internally in a very long time. And I will say this, in terms of their CRM functionality, they have gotten a little bit behind the eight ball. They're really not doing as sophisticated of a thing as, let's say, like Chime. But I also know, based on what I've looked at, I think that what they've decided, I think that without saying it, without announcing it to the world, BoomTown has decided that they are the large team solution provider for real estate marketing solutions. And what they do is they do very, very, very good job at doing things like providing microsites, creating a platform where the individual agent can feed it, like can provide the brokerage with a fee, but advertise their own page, their own listings, or their own solds and their own pendings, and they can automatically promote those into Instagram or Facebook, and then have those leads driven back to the platform, back to their own sub URL, and those leads, any leads that would be generated would automatically come to them based on the way that they entered. So they have a tracking code that's also automatically generated.
So I can see where you're going with this. And so they built all that logic into it, which would be really for a larger brokerage. How many power boutique, independent, franchise? The only problem with BoomTown is I know that a lot of the franchise players, they have been attempting to build the franchises, trying to build its own internal CRMs for the franchise and offer it to each brokerage inside the franchise. So I think that's been nibbling away at BoomTown. And the big was, but so you think that's its strongest way? They've really automation, the internal logic where leads can be dispersed to agents in the bigger team with managerial tools. Would that be right? You see it, that is one of its biggest strengths.
Yeah. Yes.
So what about in SEO? Because how do they? So I do I suppose, because I always saw it as a web agency on steroids, which is basically what Melrite is, what you are. We're all running specific, digital agencies aimed at specific verticals. So I saw them as a digital agency on steroids, trying to prototype a service, which we all were attempting to do. So do they? You get this platform from them that's got good CRM. I'd be interested to see what you say about the CRM element of it. And the website, I've always viewed their websites a bit like Chime in a previous episode. It's been one of the weaker parts of their solution. What's your feeling with that statement?
They're, one more time?
They're front-facing websites that they do produce, the micros. So I always found them a bit weak.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think they're weak. They're not great for SEO. They do have a couple clients that do okay in SEO, but it's not part of their platform. Like
Well,
they're not
in branding, and also in design terms, I didn't find they
branding,
were.
design, you name it. BoomTown is always second, third, fourth tier. It's not. They did a competent job. They came out with a decent design that was kind of top in class, but they came out with that design 7 years ago and never changed it. So they really.
Well, that's
They,
in web years are like cat years, folks, or dog years. So that's you literally you can say that's almost 14, 21 years ago, can't you?
correct. So they've got like a lot of things that they don't do very like very well. That they've got. You asked me how the CRM is. So on the individual level, the CRM is actually good. The what they've really done, what they really focus on, is the individual agent's ability to work a lead. That's what they really focus on, and they are so much more intuitive
Is it
than.
as good in UX and functionality as Follow Up Boss?
No, it's better if you are an independent agent who is a phone monster. Then BoomTown is your Huckleberry. They have partnered up with Mojo, and they have individual designs. They basically, like, I've never seen a provider do this before, but they designed a piece like internally. They got Mojo to design part of their platform for BoomTown specifically. So if you're familiar with and comfortable with Mojo, the integration is beyond comparison. There is nothing that compares because they're the only people that have ever done it. Now, if you're not using Mojo, it's not as good of a review, but it's definitely. BoomTown is designed for that person that has 3, 4, 5,000 leads inside a CRM and wants every filter under the sun already pre-built into the system. Mojo provides that for you, or BoomTown provides that for you, and then
I
they
always
transfer.
I always felt, because I forgot the gentleman that came on the show. He came on a couple times, and
Chris,
Chris, I think you built up a relationship with him after the show because you were very impressed with Chris. But he was a big Boomtown connoisseur, wasn't he? But he was internal digital manager for a large brokerage. So do you think it's kind of aimed really at the Chris types?
I think that it is. I think if you have an operations person and a strong sales leader, BoomTown is a great choice. You've got these dashboards inside BoomTown, which is another piece of their performance that is very unusual to them. That a dashboard is just a thing that measures performance, but BoomTown has ones that are pre-designed, the best that I've seen. They're designed for teams though, so that you understand it's a dashboard that measures how many calls have your team made, how many text messages have they placed, how many contacts attempts have they made out of the platform that day. And then it also has a way of measuring user engagement. So it has a way of measuring engagement with those people that your team is supposed to be talking about.
See, I feel, and just put this before we go for a break, I just feel what you just outlined, the last couple of sentences, is so important for our listeners to understand is, and it's linked to last week's episode about Chime, is it's a real hardcore tool, but I feel you've got to really have some people in your organization that can really focus on it. And you can't be the type of broker when you get, or broker or lead of a power team, and you're just giving it to a junior, and they can be with you for a couple of months, and then you've got to bring in somebody else. Then they've got to train themselves up with BoomTown and do all the training. Or you try and do it yourself, but then you're a principal of a boutique, or you're a principal of a large brokerage agency franchise, and you've got 1,000 other things to deal with. So you think, oh, I can't be bothered. And it stagnates, and you're paying, I don't know how much they charge per month. You probably do. I think you've got to really have a dedicated, either the principal of the brokerage or the power team, or it's got to be somebody that's just solely with some other dealing with it and paid enough so they don't swan off after a couple of months. And you've got to understand, you've got to have that type of setup to really, for this to pay dividends. Have I gone on a bender, or do you think there's anything I've got it about right?
You got it pretty right. Pretty close, I'd say. There's a couple things that I might elaborate on, but we're right at our break, so I'm going to discontinue it. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for staying with us so far. When we come back from the break, I'm going to comment on some of the things that John just said. I agree with some of them. I have some small adjustments that I would make to some of those statements if it was me. But regardless, we're really grateful that you've decided to tune in with us and listen to us about BoomTown. John, appreciate those commentary. We'll be right back. 3, 2, 1. Welcome back to episode number 341. We're talking about BoomTown today. And John was making some comments about the platform.
Oh, but can I interrupt a little bit? Master, are you not impressed that your student has grown in knowledge?
I am impressed.
I can start doing the talk now. I'm just a humble WordPress developer. Master, have I not grown in my knowledge?
Yes, you certainly have. So here's the thing. There's a couple things about BoomTown. So number one, in terms of there being a really top-notch tech person on your team, I agree with that. Or a strong sales manager. This is not the tool for a broker or agent who is making $1 million in commission themselves. You're never going to want to use BoomTown. It's way too complicated. It's 10 times the tool that you need. For teams who are growing, who their revenue model is to expand and grow by sales team size, BoomTown is definitely something to look at, especially if you have mid-level management, such as a Chris Anazuski, who was one of our guests on the show, and he was amazing. And he probably was one of the core reasons the team that grew. Certainly, platform adoption comes from, do you have somebody strong on your staff that understands how the tool is going to be used, that can teach and train individually to people? Having said that, BoomTown is one of the best at providing a liaison in their office to liaise with you and your team and train you. Number two, everybody else has gone to a per seat pricing model. BoomTown is not. It is a flat rate, which means that in some cases you're going to get a great deal, and in some cases you're going to overspend. It's just $1,000 or $1,500 a month, and then they charge $250 a month for PPC advertising, which means that at mid to high levels, BoomTown can actually be a steal in terms of pricing. So it really strongly depends on what size is your team. Like, how big are you? And what else are you looking at? If you've got 25 to 50 agents on your team, BoomTown is actually a hell of a deal for what you get. Okay.
What's its main, do you think that, I'm not sure about KV Core really competes with them now. I'm not sure about that. So, and what do you see as their main competitors? And how?
Ylopo and Sync, for sure.
Sync, yeah.
Like those two integrations are their competitors. Ylopo is using Follow Up Boss. Sync is using their own CRM, which is also a monster for bigger teams, and with all the filters and the ability to manage transactions out of the back of Sync and manage,
So if it was your money and you're looking at Zinc or BoomTown, which ones would you? Is there a definite winner of those two, or are there some things about either one that you think you could share so somebody could make a decision, an informed decision?
If you have a lot of partnerships that drive your brokerage, like I know a lot of agents and brokers, part of their success is, do they have lender partners? Do they have people that help out in the transaction category. Believe it or not, there's all sorts of agents out there that parse out little pieces of their business, and they partner very well with other people. And there's other people that just do it all themselves internally. Sync is a really great. I have a lot of partnerships that I want to track. BoomTown is not. So if you've got lenders and things like that, and you're trying to track the transaction, you're trying to use one tool like Brevity to do it, then Sync is the way you go. If you're just
Yeah,
using,
I've worked with a couple of agents that were utilizing Zinc, and they did get results. It was a very long-winded onboarding process for the agents, which they had to pay. They provide a certain amount of support. That's when you purchase, but then if you need more support, you have more training, you have to actually pay for it. But this was about 18 months ago. Sugar, time flies. And they were getting results, but it was PPC, and they had to throw, and this was just a power couple. A couple of these people were either a small team or a power couple, and they were having to throw that. Not only did they have the monthly fee to use Zinc, but they were throwing at about 1,000 to 1,500 on PPC through them. So it was getting around 2.5, 3 grand a month, and they weren't seeing any results until 6 months in, and then they did start to see some results. But you've got to be prepared to cough up over 20 to 30 grand, I feel, before you're going to see it.
right.
You can see where I'm coming from, can't you?
Yeah. And that's definitely, there's pros and cons. Sync and BoomTown both come from a very old school kind of philosophy, which is becoming very antiquated, very dinosaured in the real estate industry. They're used to being able to hold all the cards because they used to have really unique technology that real estate agents absolutely needed, both Sync and BoomTown. Now the average agent or team can actually buy pieces of that technology in other places and cobble together the same functionality for far less. So Sync and BoomTown's attitudes about not being friendly to data transfer, not being friendly to data integration, that's a BoomTown thing, where they are not friendly on two-way integrations. They have a few, but not many. They are not friendly.
My major problem with both these, and you've touched on it in previous episodes, is when you want to leave, you want to break up the relationship. It's, you don't want it to end bitterly, but the marriage, the personal relationship has come to its natural end. It's time to admit it and part one's way. And BoomTown and Zinc don't seem that enthusiastic if you want your data, because it ain't your data, it's their data. Do you want to pass any comments about that?
I would agree with that. It is a very unfriendly scenario in both Sync and BoomTown's cases once you get them to manage your data. Once you hand them their data, your data, you have given them the keys to your entire kingdom. Your real estate business is your data, full stop. All of your future revenues are in your CRM, and they have control of them. They're not necessarily, and you should go back to the Chris Andrzejewski interviews that we did, because I don't want you to take my word for it. Take it from a guy that ran one of the major teams using BoomTown, and then he talked about his experiences. Now, he was trying to be very polite and very nice, but nonetheless, what he illustrated was a lack of willingness from the vendor to let them access and transfer their data the way they wanted to. That is scary business as far as I'm concerned. Like, that speaks to what you're getting once you start giving control of your data over to other providers and you're a big team. You know better than I do if you're dealing with 10,000, 20,000, 50,000, contact records. you can't have a vendor hold on to those. You can't have them say,
Well, you
we're,
can't
you
paste.
know,
It's impractical to paste and copy, isn't it?
right. How much money have you spent with the vendor or anybody else to get that data? As big brokers who are listening to the show, I promise you, you and I both know that the answer is hundreds of thousands of dollars to generate those names and numbers, if not millions. It just depends on how big you are. So you're spending millions of dollars to get this data, and now somebody's telling you, we're not going to transfer it, or we're not going to let you download it in a particular file format because we don't want to. Like, what? Like, it's millions of dollars worth of data. You literally couldn't get out all the data points in BoomTown. That's one of the things that Chris brought up. He couldn't export
No,
all
it's
of
not.
his data.
I don't think they would have been difficult for the sake of being difficult. I don't think they could provide what he wanted. End of story.
Well, that you might be right, but that doesn't make it any less concerning.
No, it doesn't. No, the end result's still the same. But Zinks that we're not doing a hatchet job on BoomTown.
No.
But would you say KV Core's the same based on the experience?
We haven't gotten the same kind of like actual input on KV Core as we have with BoomTown. Now, my knowledge, a lot of it comes from you and this show and the people that we interview, and then the conversations that I have with them off air, because I get deep into the geek data shit, which like I dive really deep into it with them. I haven't had that opportunity with a KV Core customer. I haven't been all that excited about it because it's not really top in class. Whatever we're saying about BoomTown, I do want to let everybody know I still think they're top in class for medium to large size teams. They're one of 2 or 3 vendors that you absolutely should look at. There's no way for me to make a recommendation, John, because at the large and medium sized team size, these teams and got brokers,
All right, let's
honestly.
finish it. Yeah, I take what you're saying. What about follow up, boss? Because you have got some extensive experience with follow up, boss. What is their position when it comes to migrating data out of follow up, boss?
Very friendly. They have a lot more fields. They have like 22 native fields when it comes to exporting information. So in terms of importing and exporting information, they're one of the friendliest, if not the friendliest platform that exists. So it is without question one of those, but that doesn't make them perfect. There are things that you lose, like you can lose notes off a record when you export. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not saying there
No, it
is
won't
no
be. It won't
perfect
be
solution.
perfect. It never
Right.
is. Because
It's just
I've got
more
a lot. I've got
friendly.
a lot of experience in this, not precisely with real estate, but because my other business, we're dealing with learning management systems and the data of large databases because it holds all the membership of these membership sites. So I've been in the weeds with all this before, dealing with very similar situations with SaaS-based membership like Kajabi, Teachable, the big players in learning management systems. I've been all here myself, Robert. So, and I've been in the weeds and I've got the arrows in my back with, customers not understanding that Kajabi, you can't export anything out of Kajabi. If you've got a massive membership website and you want to move it to something else because they really know how to charge, it's copy and paste. It's fine, and that can cost. And they've made it that way because they don't want you going. They don't want you going anywhere. So,
Right. And that's very similar to BoomTown and Sync both. Once they have your business, they have absolutely no intention of losing it. And they will make it extremely inconvenient and expensive for you to leave and go someplace else, because the numbers strongly suggest that once you've left those platforms, you don't typically go back.
yeah.
So that there is, but to be fair, John, I mean, I don't want anybody to think that we're poking holes exclusively. Number one, John cut me off, and I want to add something. When you're doing BoomTown and you're doing a big integration, like a team of a few hundred, you should have a consultant on your staff anyway, like Chris Anazuski, like me, like John. Pay us an
Oh
hourly
no,
rate.
not me. I would send
Okay.
them to. I would send them to Robert.
Okay, so you should have somebody on your team measuring all these big questions for you. That is, unless you happen to be a tech-based broker that knows all this stuff like the back of your hand, This is one of those areas
I want
where
to make it really clear, Robert. We're aimed at the real geeks. We're aimed at bold leads. We're aimed in that world. Anybody on the brokerage level that comes to me, I'm sending them to you.
okay.
I'm not playing in that. I'm not playing in that playground. I just refer them to you, and you hopefully owe me a favor.
Beautiful. So anybody should hire, like, whatever you spend, whether it's $3,000 or $4,000. It may sound like a lot in order to look at like the 2 or 3 large platforms and measure out pieces of functionality versus what you've illustrated that you think you need. It's worth it. It's worth every penny. It's worth you measuring twice. It's worth hours and hours of conversation. It's worth somebody checking how you're going to import and export your information and what kind of data is coming out of your old CRM and into your new one. What's important to you? Because you're going to have 100 salespeople that might have notes. If you're me and you tell me I've just lost my notes from all the years that we've been in business, that might be enough for me to walk away from you, especially if I'm commission only. I might very well leave your team based on that issue. And if I'm producing you, $100,000 in net revenue every year, imagine how impactful that decision is. So please don't take this shit lightly. Like, really consider it. Your top salespeople are going to be the ones that care the most about how you're integrating, how you're messing around with their data. It is not a minor conversation about where do you have your salespeople leverage their CRM. In many cases, it might be a good piece of advice for you as a business owner to have your salespeople in their own platform, controlling their own data. They have to run their transactions through you. So you're going to have the transactions. The question is, are you big enough to manage the data in such a way that when one of your salespeople leaves, you hand their database over to somebody else? Because if the answer to that is yes, I'm big enough and organized enough, that's again when the question of a BoomTown that adds value.
Yeah, and I've come across as doing a bit of a hatchet job, but the biggest thing, the pro I see, and I think I'd see if you would agree, just to wrap up, the biggest pro is we're dealing with something that's pretty rock solid in performance and does what it says it's going to do. I get the impression by talking to a few people, for all its flaws, and everything's got its flaws and its pro. There's nothing perfect out there, folks. There is no perfect CRM, no perfect website. There's nothing perfect out there. But if you're the type of people that could benefit, the great thing about BoomTown is it's a well-tested company. They've been around a few years and it's pretty rock solid. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that. I would agree with that indeed. So, ladies and gentlemen, John is right. We're coming to the tail end of our BoomTown review. This is one I've done. I've gotten 12,000 views off my original BoomTown review. And if I get a chance to publish this one, I don't know that it's going to be as popular because my first review was a high level, and that's more easily consumable than my deep dives. But I do think that a lot of you will probably end up looking at my deep dive this time around, and you should. John, I'm going to let you dance yourself off the stage this time. How would you like people to reach out to you if they are so inclined?
Just go to the mel-right.com website, have a look at what we got to offer. Rob was impressed. Hopefully he's going to do a deeper dive in the next month and give me some advice about it all. But he was impressed. I'm not putting words in his mouth.
Nope, he's not.
For what we're our target audience, I think it offers great value, Rob. It's a very different target to what you're offering. And to BoomTown, it's not aimed at people. Where I would say, though, just to finish off, is that if I was in all honesty, folks, if I was in that position, I would look at something like what Robert's providing and follow up, boss. I think I would be in a more stronger, I would sleep better as the principal of the type of real estate brokerage that could utilize something like BoomTown if I had hired Robert and I using Follow Up Boss as the CRM. And I'm being totally honest there, folks. Over to you, Robert.
Well, thank you for that, John. I really deeply appreciate it. And I'm going to return the favor by saying, hey, if I was an agent 3 years, and I thought that I wanted to be on the path of owning my own website, there's very few better vendors that you could look at than MailRight in order to get your feet wet in a number of areas: automated systems, WordPress, owning a real estate website, maybe producing content. There's a lot of different places that you would start that could start with a product. John definitely now has his own footprint inside the real estate industry because, to the best of my knowledge, there isn't actually anybody that is doing something that you can get started with in all these different areas that are integrated all into WordPress, which means that he's now unique inside the industry.
I always knew I was unique, Robert.
Okay, well, it's from my perspective, he's now unique because I hadn't seen it, and now I've seen it. Now I'm going to say I think he's unique. So, because I take my word very seriously, which John knows, it drives him crazy, but I try to measure each and every single thing that I put online because I've got a lot of people that drive my business, that drive my reputation. I deeply respect and appreciate all of them, and I want to make sure that I further the relationship with stuff that I can put my name behind with a great deal of certainty. So having said all that, ladies and gentlemen, the most important part of this conversation is you. And we really deeply appreciate you coming by the show and supporting us and saying hi and doing all those things. You're absolutely fucking incredible. Every single one of you. We really mean it. Give yourself a thumbs up. Give yourself a comment on your own channel. Tell yourself you are awesome, because as far as John and I are concerned, you really are. Till next time.
Bye.
Bye.